Hello, everyone. I'm Billy.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Horse Frog Podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors and the creators of the Malazan Brotherhood.
Today, we'll be discussing Book 4, Chapter 21 of Memories of Ice, a novel in the Malazan Books of the Fallen. This is part 2 of our coverage of our chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books. Both Billy and I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written and want to share our love of the series with you. I didn't lose cadence on that.
No, it was beautiful.
I kept it going.
Professional, sir. Professional. We will be covering the events in the books in a linear fashion, and there will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We'll try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
A quick warning, today's episode contains adult topics and thus is not suitable for children.
Our show... Why did that land on me like that? I don't know why it's so funny.
I'm trying to change my inflection as I make that. I'm trying to make it as interesting of a statement as possible.
What you need to do is watch a bunch of Jerry Stiller on Seinfeld when he's Costanza's dad. That's a really, that's a master class on a guy that goes from 0 to 1,000 in 2 words. You know, he was greatly missed, Jerry Stiller. I'll move along. Our show is listener supported. If you'd like to support us, we'd really appreciate that. And you can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Chapter 21, Part 2. Akovian had crossed on the last barge, in the company of Stani Minakis and Gruntle and his score of barbed followers, along with 100 or so Revi, mostly elders and their dogs. As Akovian readied his horse to await the laying down of planks to disembark, Akovian was only half listening to Gruntle and Stani exchanging insults like a husband and wife who had known each other far too long. The low, worn-down hills on this side of the river still held a haze of dust and dung smoke, draped like a mourner's veil over the army's score thousand or more tents. Apart from a few hundred Revi herders and the veteran herd they were tasked to drive across come the dawn, the entire force of the invaders was now on Panyan territory. No one had contested the landing. The low hills to the south seemed devoid of life, revealing naught but the worn tracks left behind by Septark Kulpath's besieging army. Gruntle moved up alongside him and said, "Something tells me we'll be marching through raised land all the way down to Coral." Akovian said, "That seems likely, sir. It is as I would have done were I the seer." Gruntle said, "I sometimes wonder if Brood and Dujak realized that the army that besieged Kapustan was but one among at least 3 of comparable size, and while Kulpath was a particularly effective Septark, there are 6 others competent enough to cause us grief." Prior to the siege of Kapustan, Akovian was surveying Kulpath's army, and it had roughly half of the famed 100,000 units of regular infantry. So the remaining 50,000 and a large number of supporting forces make up the remaining armies referenced here.
Okay. It'll be a good-sized army.
Akovian pulled his gaze from the encampment ahead to study Gruntle. He said, "We must assume our enemy is preparing for us. Yet within the Daman, the last grains of the bell glass are even now trickling down."
Real quick question back to the other armies. Are we assuming that there's also hordes of Teniskauri with them? Or was the Teniskauri all at Kapustan and now where they are with the Grey Swords?
I think in the coming paragraphs, there's a mention of a theory that Akovian has. Let's come back to that real quick.
Okay, copy that.
Gruntle grunted, then said, "You know something the rest of us don't?" Akovian said, "Not specifically, sir. I have but drawn conclusions based on such details as I was able to observe when viewing Kulpath's army and the Teniskauri." Gruntle said, "Well, don't keep them to yourself." Akovian returned his gaze to the south. After a moment he sighed and said, "Cities and governments are but the flowering head of a plant whose stalk is the commonalty, and it is the commonalty whose roots are within the earth, drawing the necessary sustenance that maintains the flower. The Teniskauri, sir, is the Daman's surviving commonalty. People torn from their land, from their villages, their homes, their farms. All food production has ceased, and in its place has arisen the horror of cannibalism. The countryside before us is indeed raised, but not in answer to us. It has been a wasteland for some time, sir. Thus, while the flower still blazes its color, it is in fact already dead."
Okay.
And it's as we said earlier in the episode, the army has no way of provisioning itself now that they decimated their support structure.
Yeah, and I think this answers my question too.
It's actually one more paragraph, and we'll come back to it.
Well, okay, copy that. Sorry. That is nasty, though.
Yeah, it is. Gruntle said, "Dying from a hook beneath the crippled god's shelf?" Akovian shrugged and said, "Caladan Brood and the High Fist have selected cities as their destinations, lest, Seta, Marek, and Coral. Of these, I believe only the last still lives. None of the others would be able to feed a defending army. Indeed, not even its own citizenry, if any still remain. The seer has no choice but to concentrate his forces on the one city where he now resides, and his soldiers will have no choice but to assume the practices of the Teniscari. I suspect that the Teniscari were created for that eventual purpose, as food for the soldiers. So going back to that, we've talked about this earlier in the book. You thought that they were already acting as cannibals, the army.
Right.
And I was under the impression that they were actually still being provisioned with the last remaining provisions that they had harvested, but eventually would get to this point. So this is confirming that may have been the plan all along.
Okay, that's nasty.
Yeah.
So I guess an odd question to ask, and I may save this for a later point too, but I'm going to ask it now. So the seer, the Jagut tyrant, whatever it is absolutely out of his ever-loved mind, apparently. He's only bent on destruction and nothing else. Does that seem to be it?
Yeah, I think it's a twisted soul that just wants to lash out. It's hurting, wants to hurt everybody else.
Yeah.
And if you remember earlier in the book, the seer was talking to Talk, and he said that he was originally in the matron's embrace. And imagine what Talk's going through. So the seer was getting crushed, having to heal himself through sorcery. Terrible experience.
Yes.
And then eventually he was able to get out of that and put other people in there.
Yeah, because I guess he's feeding off her at the same time. Some kind of mutual exchange.
My understanding is he's leveraging her to control the remaining Kachin Jamal.
Oh, yeah. That's a nice upgrade to your armies. We need the Malazan skin over for civilization, sir. If nothing else, give us that.
You know, they came out with a Dune one, and it was rather generic from what I hear.
Right. That's
not that in-depth or complex, which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, they just came out with the early access for that Dune Awakening MMO, where you play as the Fremen. It's a alternate timeline where Paul was never born.
Okay.
And Lady Jessica gives birth to a daughter. She becomes a truth sayer and then realizes that they're getting betrayed at the Battle of Arakeen. And so they kill Dr. Yui, and then the Atreides manage to fight off the Harkonnen. The Sardaukar end up killing all the Fremen. It's just this whole alternate storyline.
What if the Atreides weren't wiped out at the Battle of Arakeen?
Well, they don't have Paul, and so there's no Lisan al-Gaib.
Right.
Muad'Dib doesn't exist, so he's not there to lead the Fremen on the...
Sorry.
Guys!
Did I ever tell you that at least my father enjoyed those movies? They enjoyed Dune.
It's hard not to.
Dude, get out
Denis
of here.
is such a good director.
Dude, get out of here. He's amazing, man. He's doing Rendezvous with Rama, if I'm not mistaken, which is my favorite Arthur C. Clarke story.
Not familiar.
It's a kind of first contact story. Earth sees on radar, we see something hurtling toward our solar system, and we realize pretty quickly it's obviously created by an intelligence. It's symmetrical shapes coming our way. This giant craft, 1.5 kilometers round and like several kilometers long, enters our solar system. It appears to be unmanned. It seems to be on a collision course with the sun. We have some people intercept and get in this place. And as we get in there, this place kind of starts coming alive. And there's some machines inside that we kind of interact with, not friendly, that they're just kind of technician stuff. And this thing seems to be almost a world inside here. And before it crashes into the sun, our team bails out, and it doesn't crash into the sun. It uses our sun to slingshot deeper into deeper space and heads on out. And it's our first contact story. And it's going to be magnificent because he brings that all like Arrival. Arrival is inspired by that kind of stuff. Rendezvous with Rama has a direct influence, I believe, on Arrival. So I'm excited to see his treatment of this.
Should be good.
It's going to be magnificent.
Yeah.
Is he the one that did Sicario?
Yes.
Dude. I finally watched it. That's amazing. It's amazing.
It's so good.
So amazing. Okay, sorry.
Digression complete. We jumped about 5 times.
I'm so sorry. It's almost like any digression sequence complete. It's like,
Digression protocol is terminated.
Okay, I'm done. All right. Move along, sir.
Authorization accepted. Moving along. Gruntle's expression was troubled. He said, "What you describe, Akovian, is an empire that was never meant to sustain itself." Akovian said, "Unless it could continue to expand without surcease." Gruntle said, but even then, it would be alive only in its outer, ever-advancing edges, spreading out from a dead core, a core that grew with it. Ikovian nodded. He said, aye, sir. Gruntle said, so, if Brood and Dujek are expecting battles at Seta, Lest, and Marek, they may be in for a surprise. Ikovian said, so I believe. Gruntle said, those Malazans will end up doing a lot of pointless marching if you're right. And that will be a big shock if that's the case. Now that Ikovian has voiced his suspicions, and based on our prior assessment that there is nothing in the heartland of the Panyan Daman, it seems like a logical conclusion.
It does. Dujek and them aren't just going there for health reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming one reason is, of course, to verify that there's, in fact, that you can't just say, well, we're just going to assume these cities are empty. We have some aerial reconnaissance that tells us this, but, you got to go check something like that anyhow, I would assume.
Trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Then, because the army's splitting, that means that you're going to be coming to your final destination point from two different places, two different angles, correct?
I think they rejoin and go together.
Do they? Okay.
I think that was the plan.
Okay.
Ikovian said, perhaps there are other issues sufficient to justify the division of forces, Mortal Sword. Gruntle said, not quite as united as they would have us believe. Ikovian said, there are powerful leaders gathered within that command, sir. It is perhaps miraculous that a serious clash of wills has not yet occurred. Gruntle said nothing for a time. The broad wicker platforms were being anchored in place at the front of the barge, a company of mercenaries assembling the walkway with practiced efficiency. Gruntle finally rumbled, let us hope then, the siege at Coral is not a long one. Ikovian said, it will not be. I predict a single attack, intended to overwhelm. A combination of soldiery and sorcery. The massive sundering of defenses is the intention of the warlord and the High Fist. Both are well aware of the risks inherent in any prolonged investment. Gruntle said, sounds messy, Ikovian. Stani came up behind them, leading her horse. She said, get moving, you two. You're holding us all up, and this damn barge is settling. And if I get any mud on these new clothes, I will kill whoever's to blame, barbed or otherwise. Ikovian smiled and said, I'd intended complimenting you on your garb. Stani cut in, the wonders of the Trigal, made to order by my favorite tailor in Darujistan. Ikovian said, you seem to favor green, sir. Stani asked, ever seen a jail parda? Ikovian nodded and said, such snakes are known in Ellengarth. Stani said, deadly kissers, jail parda. This green is a perfect match, isn't it? It had better be. It's what I paid for, and it wasn't cheap. And this pale gold, you see, lining the cloak? Ever looked at the underbelly of a white Peralt? Ikovian asked, the spider? Stani said, the death tickler. Aye, this is the color. Ikovian said, I could not have mistaken it for otherwise. Stani said, good. I'm glad someone here understands the subtle nuances of high civilization. Now move your damned horse, or what you ain't used for far too long will get introduced to the toe of my shiny new boot. Ikovian said, yes, sir. Stani lecturing anyone on high civilization is pure gold. Yeah. She sure speaks like a lady of high breeding, doesn't she?
It's like Lucy, if she was trashier. But yeah, she's back, ladies and gentlemen. I was getting a little worried. Stani had lost some of that nastiness for a while there, So she was losing a bit of her edge, just getting a little bit worried. But she's back.
Yeah, she was charging up her spirit bomb.
Yes.
Ready to unleash. Corporal Picker watched Deterin drag Hedge towards her tent. Starting off great.
Yeah, that's a bad sentence, isn't it?
The two passed in silence along the very edge of the fire pit's light before they vanished once more into the gloom. Picker was witness to a comic pantomime as Hedge, the skin of his face stretched taut in a wild grimace, sought to bolt in an effort to escape Deterin. She responded by reaching up to grip the man's throat and shaking his head back and forth until his struggles ceased. After they disappeared, Blen grunted and said, what night thankfully hides. Picker muttered, not well enough, alas, poking at the fire with a splintered spear shaft. Blen said, well, she'll probably be gagging him right now, then ripping off his... Picker said, all right, I take your point. Blen said, poor Hedge. Picker said, poor Hedge nothing, Blend. If it didn't get him going, it wouldn't still be going on night after night. I'm not so sure. Hedge did try and get away, and she had to choke him unconscious to subdue him.
Didn't she break his jaw on a previous encounter?
Was that, or a skull fracture? Some head injury.
Something that was pretty dadgum nasty.
I'm not sure how willing a member of this engagement he is.
He does not seem very willing, sir.
Yeah, and they're just kind of laughing about it.
And I guess I should feel guilty. I'm laughing about it, too.
It's interesting how...
I know exactly where you're going.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of what happened to Stani. So we have the inherent reaction of disgust and outrage at what happened to Stani.
Mm.
And then this is happening to Hedge, seemingly against his will. Maybe Pigger's right, but no one's taking it the same way, and we're laughing about it.
Yeah, it's more violent, apparently, because it's prolonged. It's been going on for a while, so it's like, this poor guy. What else has he suffered? What other injuries has this poor guy been?
Why do we have that reaction with Hedge? It's meant to be funny, I guess, right?
It is. It's meant to be funny because Hedge, we know Hedge is a squirrely dude. Him and Fed, we know that they're pretty thick and squirrely together, even though they've not been together for a couple of books now. But there is something inherently funny with Hedge. The way he's written is always funny, so I'm assuming, it's always meant to be. And it's also, Picker and Blend's running critique of things is usually just really, that's part of what makes it so daggum funny, too. It's the whole thing. It's the combination of that and their scintillating commentary.
Yeah. Is there also the assumption that men will never be upset if they're provided with the opportunity?
Right. There may be some of that there, too.
He is running in fear.
Yes, he is. He needs to learn to run faster, I guess, or he needs to leave a cusser with her name on it or something.
That's a good point. In the past, when he's been threatened by Trots, he had the cusser ready.
Yes, always.
So maybe Pigger has a little truth there.
There could be some truth there. He may be more willing than we're led to believe.
Blend said, then again, we're soldiers one and all. Pigger asked, and what's that mean? Blend said, means we know that following orders is the best way of staying alive. Pigger said, so Hedge had better stand to attention if he wants to keep breathing? Is that what you're saying? I'd have thought Terror'd leave it limp and dangling. Blend said, Deterin used to be a master sergeant, remember? I once saw a recruit stay at attention for a bell and a half after the poor lad's heart had burst to one of her tirades. A bell and a half, Picker, standing there dead and cold. Picker interrupted, rubbish. I was there. It was about 1/10 of a bell, and you know it. Blend said, my point still stands, and I bet my whole column of back pay that Hedge is doing the same. I guess we'll need to take Blend's claims with a pinch of salt. She does have a tendency to exaggerate.
But apparently she's not exaggerating completely.
Right. Still, Deterin must be terrifying if she's able to scare a recruit to death like that.
Yeah. For him to stand 1/10 of a bell after shuffling off the old Lord Recoil, buddy, that's fear, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
You think he's just standing there waiting at Hood's gate going, wait, okay. Wait, okay, I can go now.
Standing at attention?
Yes.
Pigger stabbed at the fire. After a while, she murmured, funny that. Blend asked, what is? Pigger said, oh, what you were saying. Not the dead recruit, but Deterin having been a master sergeant. We've all been busted about, us bridge burners. Almost every damn one of us. Starting right up top with Whiskey Jack himself. Mallet led a healer's cadre back when we had enough healers and the Emperor was in charge. And didn't Spindle captain a company of sappers once? Blend said, for 3 days, then one of them stumbled on his own cusser. Pigger cut in, and then they all went up. Yeah, we were 1,000 paces up the road and my ears rang for days. Blend said, that was the end of companies made up of sappers. Dassim. Broke him up after that, meaning that Spindle had no specialist corps to captain anymore. So Pigger, what about it? Pigger said, nothing, just that none of us is what we once was. What a spectacle and massive loss for the Empire. Loss of life and munitions.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what an unholy terror that company must have been? Look at what small number of these sappers can do now.
Yeah, dude, that would have been amazing. Have you ever watched on, I forget where I saw, I'm assuming it was going to be Discovery Channel, where they've blown something up with the TNT equivalent of the A-bomb.
Is that the mother of all bombs, the Moab?
Yeah.
It's like the largest non-nuclear, yeah.
So this is what I'm imagining. It's going to be pretty big. If they were 1,000 paces up the road and their ears were ringing from that, that's pretty bad.
They used, 70 some odd cussers to blow the river crossing in Deadhouse Gates?
Yeah, I think it was about there. I think you're right.
How big's a company?
I don't know how big a company is. What is it, 500?
100 to 250 soldiers.
Okay. Whatever.
So if you assume they all had a couple cussers on them, you're talking triple to, 5 times the magnitude of what we saw in Deadhouse Gates.
Yeah. Good gracious. And you got to imagine the water mitigates some of that concussive force, when it's... So with that not impeding anything, that would be wicked.
Do you think it would? I mean, it's not that deep. It was like 3-4 feet deep.
It may not be a lot, but water weighs so much And I think it disperses a lot more than we realize. I mean, I know the goat would still blow the crap out of it because we do blow stuff up underwater, and it does. I think people can feel it kind of deal, but I don't know. Kamraun, that's a good question.
It would have been a big blast.
Yeah. And Spindle's in charge.
How did he survive?
That's a good question. I'm assuming it's something to do with his mage abilities.
Maybe.
He's the one that's got the power that drives the animals nuts, right?
Yes. The hair shirt, the whole deal.
Yes, hair shirt. So something with that, maybe his mom.
Mm-hmm. Blen said, I've never been promoted. Picker exclaimed, well, surprise. You made a profession of not getting noticed. Blen said, even so. And Auntie was born a sergeant. Picker interrupted, and it stunted his growth, aye. He's never been busted down, granted, but that's because he's the worst sergeant there ever was. Keeping him one punishes all of us, starting with Auntie himself. All I was saying was, we're all of us losers. Blen said, oh, that's a welcome thought, Picker. Picker said, and who said every thought has to be a nice one? Nobody. Blen said, I would, only I didn't think of it. Picker said, ha, ha. The slow clump of horse hooves reached them. A moment later, Perrin came into view, leading his horse by the reins. Picker said, been a long day, Captain. We got some tea if you'd like. Perrin looped the reins over the saddle horn and approached. He said, last fire left among the bridge burners. Don't you two ever sleep? Picker said, we could ask the same of you, sir. But we already know that sleep's for weaklings, right? Perrin said, depends on how peaceful it is, I'd think. Blen said to Picker, Captain's right on that. Picker said, well, I'm peaceful enough when I sleep. Blen grunted and said, that's what you think. Perrin accepted the cup of steaming herbal brew from Picker and said, we've had word from the Black Maranth. Picker said, they reconnoitered Seta. Perrin said, aye. There's no one there. Not breathing anyway. The whole city's one big necropolis. Picker said, so why are we still marching there? Unless we're not. Perrin said, we are, Corporal. Picker asked, what for? Perrin said, we're marching to Seta because we're not marching to Lest. Blen sighed and said, well, I'm glad that's been cleared up. Perrin sipped his tea, then said, I've elected a second. Picker asked, a second, sir? Why? Perrin said, obvious reasons. In any case, I've chosen you, Picker. You're now a lieutenant. Whiskey Jack has given his blessing. In my absence, you're to command the bridge burners. Picker said, no thanks, sir. Perrin said, it's not up for discussion, Picker. Your lieutenancy is already inscribed in the rolls. Official, with Dujek's seal on it. Blen nudged her and said, congratulations. Oh, I suppose I should have saluted. Picker growled, shut up. But you're right on one thing. Don't ever bump me again, woman. Blen said, that's a hard order to follow, sir. Perrin drained the last of his tea and straightened. He said, I've only got one order for you, Lieutenant. Picker looked up at him and said, Captain? Perrin's expression was suddenly severe. He said, the bridge burners. Keep them together, no matter what happens. Together, Lieutenant. Picker said, yes, sir. They watched Perrin return to his horse and lead it away. Neither woman said much for a while thereafter. Then Blen sighed and said, let's go to bed, Picker. Picker said, aye. They stamped out the remnants of the fire. Darkness closing around them, Blen stepped closer and hooked her arm around Picker's. Blen murmured, it's all down to what the night hides. Picker thought, to Hood it is. It's all down to what the captain was saying behind what he said. That's what I need to figure out. Something tells me it's the end of sleeping peacefully for Lieutenant Picker. They strode from the dying embers and were swallowed by darkness. Moments later, no movement was visible, the stars casting their faint silver light down on the camp of the bridge burners. The off-patched tents were colorless in the dull, spectral glow, a scene that was ghostly and strangely timeless, revealing its own kind of peace. I did not like the sound of that warning from Perrin. Little ominous.
Yeah, just a tad.
It wasn't even really a warning, it was a command, right?
Yeah, but it's the way he said it just kind of felt like, you keep them together. You know, like very begging them almost. It's like, wow, okay, sure.
Yeah. And we have confirmation that Picker and Blen are in a romantic relationship.
Yes.
Whiskey Jack entered Dujak's command tent. As expected, the high fist was prepared for him. Hooded lantern on camp table, 2 tankards of ale, and a block of Gadrobi goat cheese. Dujak himself sat in one of the chairs, head lowered in sleep. Whiskey Jack removed his gauntlets and said, high fist, with eyes on the ale and cheese. Dujak grunted, sat straighter, blinking. He said, right. Whiskey Jack said, we've lost her. Dujak said, too bad. You must be hungry. So oh good. Keep filling your mouth and leave the talking to me then. He leaned forward and retrieved his tankard, then went on. Artanthos found Perrin and delivered the orders. So, the captain will get the bridge burners ready. Ready for what? They won't know, and that's probably for the best. As for Perrin himself, all right. Quick Ben convinced me. Too bad that, though I'll be honest and say, as far as I can see, we'll miss the wizard more than we will that noble-born lad. Holding up one hand to stop Dujak, Whiskey Jack washed down the last of the cheese with a mouthful of ale. Dujak sighed and waited. Whiskey Jack said, Dujek. Dujek growled, comb the crumbs from your beard since I expect you want me to take you seriously. Whiskey Jack went on. A word on Perrin. With the loss of Silver Fox, the captain's value to us can't be overestimated. No, not just us. The Empire itself. Quick Ben's been adamant on this. Perrin is the master of the deck. Within him is the power to reshape the world, High Fist. He paused, mulling on his own words, then continued. Now, maybe there's no chance of Lysine ever regaining the man's favor, but at the very least she'd be wise to avoid making the relationship worse. Dujek's brows lifted. He said, I'll so advise her the next time I see her. Whiskey Jack said, all right, sorry. No doubt the Empress is cognizant. Dujek said, no doubt. As I was saying, however, it's the loss of Quick Ben that stings the most. From my point of view, that is. Whiskey Jack said, well, sir, what the wizard has in mind, I agree with him that the less Brood and company know of it, the better. So long as the division of forces proceeds as planned, they'll have no reason but to believe that Quick Ben marches in step with the rest of us. Dujek said, the wizard's madness. Whiskey Jack interrupted, High Fist. The wizard's madness has saved our skins more than once. Not just mine and the bridge burners, but yours as well. Dujek said, I am well aware of that, Whiskey Jack. Forgive an old man his fears, please. It was Brood and Rake and the Tistandi and the damned elder gods as well, who were supposed to step into the crippled god's path. They're the ones with countless warrens and frightening levels of potency, not us. Not one mortal squad wizard and a young noble-born captain who's already died once. Even if they don't mess things up, look at the enemies we'll acquire. Whiskey Jack said, assuming our present allies are so short-sighted as to fail to comprehend. Dujek said, Whiskey Jack, we're the Malazans, remember? Nothing we do is ever supposed to reveal a hint of our long-term plans. Mortal empires aren't supposed to think that far ahead, and we're damn good at following that principle, you and I. Hood take me, Lysine inverted the command structure for a reason, you know. Whiskey Jack said, so the right people would be there at ground level when Shadowthrone and Cotillion made their move, aye. Dujek said, not just them, Whiskey Jack. Pause there. Following Picker and Blen's conversation about everyone being busted down in rank, now we find out that the Empress is playing 5D chess and did this on purpose?
Wow. And I'm just so blown away by this. This makes me think a little different about Lysine, doesn't it? Makes you think a little bit different about her?
Yeah. There's some stuff coming up here that changes the perception of multiple characters. And
right.
Again, you go back to perspective. Lack of information. If you hear one person's perspective, it's not the whole story in many cases.
Right.
We should probably talk about that in a couple paragraphs.
Yeah. Copy that.
One thing I do wonder at is how Corlat's assertion that Lysine was trying to kill Whiskey Jack plays into this. Do you think both cases are true? And we'll probably get an answer to this
yes.
here in a little bit.
For some reason, I think both, yeah, because one person that would be a threat to her, I think, is Whiskey Jack above all for some reason. She sees him as a potential threat, and I think she was just looking out for her possible future issues. She may regret having done that or having tried to done this in the past, but, she is mortal after all. She apparently makes mistakes too, but, wow, I'm really impressed with this reveal here.
Yeah. Whiskey Jack said, this should be made known to Quick Ben, to all the bridge burners, in fact. Dujek said, no. In any case, don't you think your wizards figured things out yet? Whiskey Jack said, if so, then why did he send Kalam after the Empress? Dujek said, because Kalam needs to be convinced in person, that's why. Face to face with the Empress. Quick Ben knew that. Whiskey Jack sighed and said, then I must be the only thick-witted one in this entire Imperial game. Dujek said, maybe the only truly honorable one at any rate. Look, we knew the crippled god was getting ready to make a move. We knew the gods would make a mess of things. Granted, we didn't anticipate the elder gods getting involved, but that's neither here nor there, is it? The point was, we knew trouble was coming, from more than one direction. But how could we have guessed that what was going on in the Panyan Daman was in any way related to the efforts of the crippled god? Even so, I don't think it was entirely chance that it was a couple of bridge burners who bumped into that agent of the Chained One, that sickly artisan from Darujistan, nor that Quick Ben was there to confirm the arrival of the House of Chains. Lysine has always understood the value of tactical placement yielding results. Hood knows, she taught that to the Emperor, not the other way round. The crippled god's pocket warren wanders, it always has. That it wandered to the hills between Pale and Darujistan was an opportunity the crippled god could not pass up if he was going to do anything. He had to act. And we caught him. Maybe not in a way we'd anticipated, but we caught him. Whiskey Jack muttered, well enough. Dujek went on. As for Perrin, there's a certain logic there as well. Tashrin was grooming Tattersail to the role of Mistress of the Deck, after all. And when that went wrong, well, there was a residual effect, straight to the man closest to her at the time. Not physically, but certainly spiritually. In all this, Whiskey Jack, if we look on things in retrospect, the only true thick-witted player was Bellardan Skullcrusher. We'll never know what happened between him and Tattersail on that plane. but by the Abyss it ranks as one of the worst foul-ups in Imperial history. That the role of Master of the Deck fell to a Malazan and not to some Gadrobi herder who'd happened to be nearby, well, Opan's luck played into our hands there, and that's about all we can say of that, I think. I didn't remember this piece that Tattersail was supposed to have been the mistress of the deck, and it makes sense given her skill with the divination that we saw in Gardens of the Moon.
This is true, and it is a big reveal I didn't remember either.
And then Perrin becoming the master of the deck simply through proximity to Tattersail spiritually, to me that's random chance.
This is where I'm not really sure if it is or not, because remember, before he even saw Tattersail, he met 4 deities crossed his path while he was there at Hood's Gate, before his revival. So I'm not, you have a pawn, which is 2, the brother and sister, even though one bailed, and then you got Shadow Throne and the rope waiting, and then the hounds were going to show up. So that may have done something. I'm not sure. Why is he singled out for all this craziness? You got the Blood of the Hounds incident. You got the Dragon of her incident. He may have been singled out before he met her, is all I'm getting at, possibly.
He did have the sword at the time. He had picked it up in a shop, so maybe luck did play into it in some way.
Could be. They could have nudged it his favor toward him. Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
I don't know. The Perrins are such major fulcrums on this whole. I start to see this more the more we read it. You're like, good gracious. Those 3 seem to have the most laying on them of any humanoids on the planet, almost. At least 2 of them in particular.
I agree with you. In many ways, the Malazan Book of the Fallen, from a human perspective, the influence of the Perrin house is second to none.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Whiskey Jack said, "Now I'm the one who's worried. We've been too clever by far, leaving me wondering who's manipulating whom. We're playing shadow games with the Lord of Shadow, rattling the chains of the crippled god, and now buying Brood more time without him even knowing it, whilst at the same time defying the Talani Mass, or at least intending to." Dujek said, "Opportunity, Whiskey Jack. Hesitation is fatal. When you find yourself in the middle of a wide, raging river, there's only one direction to swim in. It's up to us to keep Lasine's head above water, and through her, the Malazan Empire. If Brood swings his hammer in Byrne's name, we drown. All of us. Law, order, peace, civilization, all gone." Whiskey Jack said, "So, to keep Brood from doing that, we sacrifice ourselves by challenging the crippled god. Us. One damned weary army already decimated by one of Lasine's panics." Dujek said, "Best forgive her panics, Whiskey Jack. Shows she's mortal, after all." Whiskey Jack said, "Virtually wiping out the bridge burners at Pale." Dujek said, "Was an accident, and while you didn't know it at the time, you know it now. Tayshrin ordered them to remain in the tunnels because he thought it was the safest place. The safest." Whiskey Jack said, "Seemed more like someone wanted us to be a collateral fatality. No, not us. Me. Damn you, Dujek, you lead me to suspect you knew more of that than I'd hoped. Beru Fend, I hope I'm wrong. And with what happened at Darujistan," Dujek said, "what happened at Darujistan was a mess. Miscommunication on all sides. It was too soon after the siege of Pale. Too soon for all of us." Whiskey Jack said, "So I wasn't the only one rattled then." Dujek said, "At Pale? No. Hood take us. We all were. That battle didn't go as planned. Tayshrin really believed he could take down Moonspawn and force Rake into the open. And had he not been left virtually on his own in the attack, things might well have turned out differently. From what I learned later, Tayshrin didn't know at the time who Nightchill really was, but he knew she was closing in on Rake's sword. Her and Bellerdan, who she was using to do her research for. It looked like a play for her power, a private one, and Lasine wasn't prepared to permit that. And even then, Tayshrin only hit her when she took out Acheronis, the very high mage who came to Tayshrin with his suspicions about her. When I said Bellerdan killing Tattersail was the worst foul-up in Malazan history, that day at Pale runs a close second." Whiskey Jack said, "There have been more than a few lately." So the story finally comes out in its fullest form, and surprise, surprise, Nightchill is causing problems.
Yep.
It's interesting how such critical but small pieces of information can utterly shift your perception on who was right or wrong in a given scenario. Tayshrin has been vilified to this point, but his attack on Nightchill was a reaction to her own betrayal.
This is just an absolutely amazing piece of info to get it all spelled out here. And I had forgotten this as well, but you're right. This totally changes everything on how I have felt about Tayshrin. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Now, this does not fit the information that I thought I knew. And thank you, Mr. Erikson, for this. These are delightful little nuggets that you find as you go, and we get some more in this chapter, too.
Yeah, so perspective. We were fed a certain perspective of what happened to this point. Now we're hearing the other side of the story, and Lasine was vilified to the point where Kalam went to assassinate her, and then the Bridgeburners thought it was done to kill them when they were actually being protected, or they were supposed to be being protected. So everything up to this point that we thought was true is not.
Yeah, it's wild, dude. Book 3, and you're just finding out, wait, what? Just had the rug pulled out from us, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
The consistent theme, though, is Night Chill is a problem.
Night Chill is not very nice. She's not very friendly.
We're getting Silver Fox adjacent because
Right.
Night Chill's in there. So I'm going to dial it back.
Yeah, I mean, well, it is true. It is true, but it's funny. I think it's kind of spooky. It's kind of wild that she wanted Dragnapur. She was what for? What are you going to do with it? What's up with that?
Well, she seems mean and holds a grudge.
Boy, she does.
So you tell me what you think she's going to use it for.
Well, after she murders everyone that's ever done her wrong,
Mm-hmm.
sit them inside the sword. We got a megalomaniacal kind of bent to her.
Yeah.
Why not take the throne?
I don't know if she cares about a throne of a mortal empire.
She may not.
Yeah.
She may not.
Probably has bigger designs.
She could just be a nihilist.
She believes in nothing.
She believes in nothing. You have nothing to be. These men are nihilists, Donnie.
I mean, she's the sister of the Cold Knights. Cold is basically the embodiment of nothing. The ultimate cold.
Yeah. She might be down for this wiping everybody out and just going back to the way, the original status quo before there was something.
Dujek slowly nodded, his eyes glittering in the lantern light. He said, all starting, I'd say, with the Talanai mass slaughtering the citizens of Erin. But, as even with that one, each disaster yields its truths. Lasine didn't give that order, but someone did. Someone returned to sit in that first throne, and that someone was supposed to be dead. And he used the Talanai mass to wreak vengeance on Lasine, to shake her grip on the Empire. Lo, the first hint that Emperor Kellanved wasn't quite as dead as we would have liked. Whiskey Jack said, and still insane, Dujek, I think we're heading for another disaster.
So, for some reason, I've always got the impression that there was a lot of loyalty toward Kellanved over Lasine, and it appears that even these guys think Kellanved was quite crazy. Is that a good thing or a bad?
Right.
I don't know if they think. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Let's go back to that question about the wizard and his madness. It's like, is that like us just going, that's just insane, dude, or out of your mind? Is that kind of hyperbole that us dudes are using together, or I don't know. But it's like, man, the emperor is just insane, or he sounds crazy. Did he become that way? Does pus, does that stuff do that? Like we talk about, we've speculated that being a shadow follower eventually drives you insane, and he who is the craziest gets the most power?
Maybe it takes somebody crazy to do what he did, to form the Malazan Empire.
That's kind of true also. I get what you're saying there, yes. I know what you mean, that kind of insanity, yes. An empire-forging mind.
Yes. Dujek said, I hope you're wrong. In any case, I was the one who needed his confidence boosted tonight, not you. Whiskey Jack said, well, I guess that's the price of inverted commands. Dujek said, for all that I've been saying, a new observation comes to me, Whiskey Jack, and it's not a pleasant one. Whiskey Jack asked, and that is? Dujek said, I'm beginning to think we're not half as sure of what we're up to as we think we are. Whiskey Jack asked, who's we? Dujek said, the Empire, Lasine, Tashrin. As for you and I, well, we're the least of the players, and what little we know isn't even close to what we need to know. We stepped up to the assault on Moonspawn at Pale knowing virtually nothing of what was really going on. And if I hadn't cornered Tashrin after, we still wouldn't. Whiskey Jack studied the dregs of ale in the tankard in his hands. He murmured, Quick Ben's smart. I can't really say how much he's worked out. He can get pretty cagey at times. Dujek said, he's still willing, surely. Whiskey Jack said, oh yes, and he's made it plain that he has acquired a powerful faith in Geno Perrin, in this new master of the deck. Dujek said, does that strike you as odd then? Whiskey Jack said, a little. Perrin has been used by a god. He's walked within the sword Dragnapur. He has the blood of a hound of shadow in his veins, and none of us know what changes such things have wrought in him, or even what they portend. He's been anything but predictable, and he's almost impossible to manage. Oh, he'll follow orders I give him, but I think if Lasine believes she can use him, she might be in for a surprise. Dujek said, you like the man, don't you? Whiskey Jack said, I admire him, Dujek, for his resilience, for his ability to examine himself with a courage that is ruthless, and, most of all, for his inherent humanity. Dujek said, sufficient to warrant faith, I'd say. Whiskey Jack grimaced. He said, stabbed by my own sword. Dujek said, better that than someone else's. Whiskey Jack said, I'm thinking of retiring, Dujek, when this war is finished. Dujek said, I'd guessed as much, friend. Whiskey Jack looked up and asked, you think she'll let me? Dujek said, I don't think we should give her the choice. Whiskey Jack said, shall I drown like Crust and Urko did? Shall I be seen to be slain, then have my body vanish like Dassem did? Dujek said, assuming none of those really happened. Whiskey Jack said, Dujek. Dujek cut in, all right, but some doubt still remains, you have to admit. Whiskey Jack said, I don't share it. And one day I'll track down Duiker and force the truth from him. If anyone knows, it's that cranky historian. We have confirmation that Cartheron Crust is still alive since he's the captain of the Ragstopper. That was confirmed in Deadhouse Gates.
Yeah.
So these dudes believe Urko Crust, who's Cartheron's brother, and Dassem could potentially still be alive. Interesting.
That is more than interesting. It's very, very interesting, sir. I must know more.
Yeah. The idea that Dassem Ultor is still out there, man.
The first sword, man.
Mm.
We don't even know anything about this old boy other than just that his name is legendary because we have made it so, but it's also been legendary in the Empire. But it's just like they just love it. And you hear this guy's names mentioned with nothing but reverence and a little awe and some fear. And the guy even, we know, turned around and tried to kind of smack Hood in the face over some incident. And it's like, whoa, okay.
How legendary of a character can
like,
you
I
make?
Gotta meet, I don't think you can make, I'm dying to meet this guy. It's like, so he's alive. It's like, all right, dude, he's alive. We're going to meet this guy. We're going to possibly meet this fella.
Dujek asked, has Quick Ben heard from Kalam yet? Whiskey Jack said, he's not told me so if he has. Dujek asked, where's your wizard right now? Whiskey Jack said, I last saw him jawing with those Trigal traders. Dujek said, the man should be getting some sleep with what's coming. Whiskey Jack set down the tankard and rose. He said, so should we, old friend, wincing as he settled too much weight on his bad leg. He went on, when are the Black Maranth arriving? Dujek said, 2 nights hence. Whiskey Jack grunted, then swung towards the tent's exit and said, good night, Dujek. Dujek said, and to you, Whiskey Jack. Oh, one last thing. Whiskey Jack said, yes? Dujek said, Tashrin. He's been wanting to apologize to you for what happened to the bridge burners. Whiskey Jack said, he knows where to find me, Dujek. Dujek said, he wants a proper moment. Whiskey Jack asked, what's proper? Dujek said, I'm not sure, but it hasn't happened yet. Whiskey Jack said nothing for a half-dozen heartbeats. Then he reached for the tent flap and said, see you in the morning, Dujek. Dujek said, aye. What a detail-rich section that was. The amount of info dropped there is actually astonishing. I don't know if I've had another section that had that much info in it yet.
I agree.
Can you think of any that we've come across?
No. And if I'm not mistaken, and I'm completely blown away by what all we've just heard here, and if I'm not mistaken, that we still have some more doozies left coming ahead of us here, right?
Maybe. But I mean, just that conversation between Dujek and Whiskey Jack, and then lumping in Picker and Blend before that, all that together was just a whole host for Malazan nerds. It's just like a gold mine.
Yes. That's almost like the fan service section.
As Whiskey Jack made his way towards his own tent, he saw a tall, dark-robed figure standing before it. He smiled as he approached and said, I'd missed you. Corlat said, and I you. Whiskey Jack said, Brood's been keeping you busy. Come inside. It'll only be a moment before I get the lantern lit. He heard her sighing behind him as they entered the tent. She said, I'd rather you didn't bother. Whiskey Jack said, well, you can see in the dark, but... She drew him round and settled against him, then murmured, if there is to be a conversation, keep it short, please. What I desire is not answered by words. He closed his arms around her and said, I'd only wondered if you'd found Silver Fox. She said, no, it seems she is able to travel paths I did not think still existed. Instead, 2 of her undead wolves arrived to escort me home. They are unusual. Whiskey Jack thought back to when he'd first seen the Talan A, rising as dust from the yellow grasses, finding their bestial shapes until the hills on all sides were covered. He said, I know. There's something strangely disproportionate about them. Corlat said, yes, you are right. They jar the eye. 2 long limbs, 2 large shoulders, yet short-necked and wide-jawed. But there is more than just their physical appearance that I found alarming. Whiskey Jack asked, more so than the Talani mass? She nodded and said, there is. Within the Talani mass, an emptiness, as of a smoke-blackened cavity, but not with the Talani. Within these wolves, I see sorrow, eternal sorrow. She shivered in his arms. Whiskey Jack said nothing. He thought, you see in their eyes, dear lover, what I see in yours, and it is the reflection, the recognition that has shaken you so. Corlat went on. At the camp's edge they fell to dust. One moment trotting on either side, then gone. I don't know why, but that disturbed me more than anything else. He thought, because it is what awaits all of us, even you, Corlat. He said, this conversation was supposed to be short. It ends now. Come to bed, lass. She looked into his eyes and asked, and after tonight? He grimaced and said, it may be a while, aye. Corlat said, Crone has returned. Whiskey Jack said. Has she now? Corlat nodded. She was about to say more, then hesitated, searching his eyes, and said nothing. Seta, lest Marek. The cities were empty, yet the armies were dividing nonetheless, and neither would speak of why. Both sides of the alliance had things to hide, secrets to maintain, and the closer they got to Coral, the more problematic it became maintaining those secrets. Whiskey Jack thought, most of the Tistandi have vanished, gone with Rake, probably to Moonspawn. But where is Moonspawn? And what in Hood's name are they planning? Will we arrive at Coral only to find the city already fallen, the Panyan Seer dead, his soul taken by Dragnapur, and that massive mountain hanging overhead? The Black Maranth have searched for that damned floating rock, to no avail. And then there are our secrets. We're sending Perrin and the bridge burners ahead. Hood, take us. We're doing a lot more than that. This is an unwelcome play for power, now imminent. We all knew it was coming. Seta, lest Marek. The subtle game is no longer subtle. Still holding Corlat in his arms, Whiskey Jack said, My heart is yours, Corlat. Nothing else matters to me. Nothing. No one. Corlat said, Please do not apologize for what has not even happened yet. Don't talk about it at all. Whiskey Jack said, I didn't think I was, lass. Then he thought, Liar. You were, in your own way. You were apologizing. She accepted the lie with a wry smile and said, Very well. Later, Whiskey Jack would think back on his words and wish that they had been cleaner, devoid of hidden intent. Eyes grainy from a lack of sleep, Perrin watched Quick Ben close his conversation with Herodis, then leave the company of the Trigal trader to rejoin him. Perrin said, The sappers will howl, as the two of them resumed their walk towards the Malazan encampment, newly established on the south shore of Catlin River. Quick Ben shrugged and said, I'll take Hedge to one side for a word or two. After all, Fiddler's closer than a brother to him, and with the mess that Fid's got into, he needs all the help he can get. The only issue is whether the Trigal can deliver the package in time. Ah! There's another link to Deadhouse Gates from a timeline perspective. They are about to send Fiddler and company the care package that they get outside of Tremorlore.
Dude, that is so cool. I just love that. I love how so this is going on right now.
Yes.
It's like those people are in desperate need. We know what they're walking into.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing it from this side. It's like, wow, that's cool.
Perrin said, They're an extraordinary lot, those traders. Quick Ben said, They're insane, doing what they're doing. Sheer audacity is the only thing that keeps them alive.
That's a bold statement coming from one that everyone calls him crazy.
Yes, true.
So Quick is calling because these guys are crazy. It's like, these guys are insane. It's like, dude, you're saying that? It's like, wow.
Mm-hmm. It's like when the craziest friend you have thinks somebody else is crazy.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is, dude. Oh, that's too funny.
Perrin added, I'd add a certain skill for traveling inimical warrens, Quick. Quick Ben said, Let us hope it's sufficient. Perrin said, It wasn't just Maranth munitions, was it? Quick Ben said, No, the situation in 7 cities couldn't be more desperate. Anyway, I've done what I could. As to its effectiveness, we'll see. Perrin said, You're a remarkable man, Quick Ben. Quick Ben said, No, I'm not. Now best keep all this as private an affair as possible. Hedge will keep his trap shut, and so will Whiskey Jack. He was interrupted by a voice saying, Gentlemen, such a lovely evening! Both swung at the voice booming directly behind them. Quick Ben hissed, Krupp, you slippery... Krupp cut in. Now, Krupp begs your indulgence. 'Twas mere happy accident that Krupp heard your admirable words whilst almost stumbling ever so quietly on your heels. And indeed, now he desires nothing else than to partake ever so humbly in courageous enterprise. Quick Ben growled, If you speak a word of this to anyone, I will slit your throat. Krupp withdrew his decrepit handkerchief and mopped his forehead. 3 quick dabs that seemed to leave the silk cloth sodden with sweat. He said, Krupp assures deadly wizard that silence is as Krupp's closest mistress, lover unseen and unseeable, unsuspected and unmitigable, whilst at the same time Krupp proclaims that the fair citizens of Jeruzhistan will hark to such a noble cause. Baruch himself so assures, and would do so in person were he able. Alas, he has naught but this to offer. With that, Krupp withdrew with a flourish a small glass ball from the handkerchief, then dropped it to the ground. It broke with a soft tinkle. Mists rose, gathered knee-high between the Daru and the 2 Malazans, and slowly assumed the form of a baccaral.
Then I'm assuming that this is the other linkage that will be tied up here, where, remember when the Trigal shows up at the end with Coltane. Remember the care package they bring with the water and stuff at the very end?
Yes, you're correct.
So this is another connection setting up for right here. That's really cool, man. Really cool.
Love it. Krupp muttered, Aye, such ugly, indeed visually offensive creatures. Quick Ben said, Only because you resemble them all too closely.
I thought they'd be cute, wouldn't you?
No, I don't like monkeys. No.
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 Neither do I. Neither do I, and my wife likes them. I'm like, I think they wig me out. I think I've used this phrase before from a comedian. They look too much like folks. I don't like them.
Well, I may have told this story on the podcast before, but quick refresher. When I was in high school, there was a guy that played baseball in my chemistry class my sophomore year.
Okay.
And he was watching his neighbor's monkey while they were out of town, and it bit his hand and took a 2-inch sliver of ligament out of his hand. He couldn't play baseball for the rest of the year.
Oh, my word.
They had to staple the ligament. He had to stretch it because his finger was like permanently back because it was missing 2 inches of his ligament, and they had to slowly stretch it. That really stuck with me because we all grew up with the monkey in Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, look how cute it is. Little capuchin monkey or whatever it is. Nah, man. They're vicious little beasts. Do not anthropomorphize them.
Yes. Well, the one that gets me are the horror stories of the ex-chimp owners who go visit their chimp, and then he peels your face off, and you're like, oh, okay. Well, yeah. We don't need to be having monkeys as pets now, because it damages them. It does something to them.
Nope, the movie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my word.
That perfectly encompassed what you're talking about.
Wait, which part? I'm sorry.
No, so Nope was the alien movie, right?
Right, yeah.
The subplot of the actor with the chimpanzee that killed everybody on set when he was the child actor.
Oh, oh my gosh. I completely forgot about that, yes.
That was the worst part of the movie for me.
Yeah, that was the horror part of the horror movie.
Well, there was some bad parts with the alien too.
And the Fry stuff was just gold.
Yeah.
Fry's still lives on in Nope.
It does. And you know what's interesting? I'm sitting in the garage in the season of rot, and on my workbench here, I found a Fry's logo that I pulled off a Fry's PC case that I got rid of recently. It was just an old, outdated PC case.
Wow.
But I was just looking at it before we started recording the show, and it's a little bit nostalgic.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you still have your pens? I have my service pens in my car.
Oh, and they're in your car?
Yeah.
Nice.
They're in my car, yeah.
I still have them.
Yeah, groovy. Good man.
Quick Ben said, only because you resemble them all too closely, his eyes on the apparition. And this is in response to Krupp saying how ugly the Baccaral is. The Baccaral twisted its neck to look up at the wizard, glittering black eyes in a black grapefruit-sized head. The creature bared its needle teeth and said, Greet! Baruch, master! Wood, help! Krupp said, sadly terse effort on dear, no doubt overworked Baruch's part. His best conjurations displayed linguistic grace, if not amiable fluidity, whilst this thing, alas, evinces. Quickpen said, quiet, Krupp. He spoke to the Baccaral. Uncharacteristic as it sounds, I would welcome Baruch's help, but I must wonder at the alchemist's interests. This is a rebellion in 7 cities, after all, a Malazan matter. The Baccaral's head bobbed. It said, yes, Baruch, master, Raraku, Azath, great! The head jumped up and down again. Perrin said, great? The Baccaral said, great! Danger! Azath, Icarium, more, Coltane, admire, honor, allies, yes, yes? Quickben muttered, something tells me this won't be easy. All right, let's get down to details. When accuracy matters, how are you going to convey appropriately the request in this scenario?
Well, at least he has Coltane and admire next to each other. I like that.
Yeah. Perrin turned at the sound of an approaching rider. The figure appeared, indistinct in the starlight. The first detail the captain noted was the horse, a powerful destrier, proud and clearly short-tempered. The woman astride the animal was by contrast unprepossessing, her armor plain and old, the face beneath the rim of the helm apparently undistinguished, middle-aged. Her gaze flicked to Krupp, the Baccaral, and Quick Ben. Her expression unchanged. She said to Perrin, Captain, I would a word with you, in private, sir. Perrin said, as you wish, and led her off 15 paces from the others, then asked, private enough? The woman said, this will suffice, reining in and dismounting. She stepped up to him and said, Sir, I am the destriant of the Grey Swords. Your soldiers hold a prisoner, and I have come to formally request that he be taken into our care. Perrin blinked, then nodded and said, Ah, that would be a Naster, who once commanded the Teniscauri. Velbara said, It would, sir. We are not yet done with him. Perrin said, I see. He hesitated. Velbara asked, Has he recovered from his wounds? Perrin said, The lost eye? He has been treated by our healers. Velbara said, Perhaps I should deliver my request to High Fist Dujek. Perrin said, No, that won't be necessary. I can speak on behalf of the Malazans. In that capacity, however, it's incumbent that I ask a few questions first. Velbara said, As you wish, sir. Proceed. Perrin asked, What do you intend to do with the prisoner? She frowned and said, "Sir?" Perrin said, "We do not countenance torture, no matter what his crime. If it is required, we would be forced to extend protection over Anaster, and so deny your request." She glanced away briefly, then fixed her level gaze on him once more, and Perrin realized she was much younger than he had at first assumed. She said, "Torture, sir, is a relative term." Perrin asked, "Is it?" Velbara said, "Please, sir, permit me to continue." Perrin said, "Very well." Velbara said, "The man, Anaster, might well view what we seek for him as torture, but that is a fear born of ignorance. He will not be harmed. Indeed, my shield anvil seeks the very opposite for the unfortunate man." Perrin said, "She would take the pain from him." Velbara nodded. Perrin said, "That spiritual embrace such as Ikovian did to Rathfainer." Velbara said, "Even so, sir." Perrin was silent a moment. Then he said, "The notion terrifies Anaster?" Velbara said, "Yes." Perrin asked, "Why?" Velbara said, "Because he knows of nothing else within him. He has equated his entire identity with the pain of his soul, and so fears its end." Perrin towards the Malazan camp and said, "Follow me." Behind him she asked, "Sir?" Perrin said, "He is yours, Destriant, with my blessing." She staggered then against her horse, which grunted and sidestepped. Perrin spun and said, "What?" The woman righted herself, lifted a hand to her brow, then shook her head and said, "I am sorry. There was weight to your use of that word." Perrin said, "My use? Oh." He thought, "Oh, hood's breadth, Ganois. That was damned careless." He reluctantly asked, "And?" Velbara said, "And I'm not sure, sir, but I think you would be well advised to, exercise caution in the future." Perrin said, I think you're right. Are you recovered enough to continue?" She nodded, collecting the reins of her horse. Perrin thought, "Don't think about it, Ganois Perrin. Take it as a warning and nothing more. You did nothing to Anaster. You don't even know the man. A warning, and you'll damn well heed it." New skill unlocked. So it is as simple as him saying, "I bless you."
Yeah.
That's crazy. No ritual needed.
Best not to sneeze around this fella.
That's a good one, Billy. And thus the chapter ends.
Wow.
For standout moments, Akovian and Gruntle discussing their theories on what's awaiting their forces in the Panyan Daman.
Yeah, eye-opening to say the least. Kind of disturbing that what we thought might be the case is actually the case.
I like the comparison of the flower blooming, but the root and the stem are dead. Yeah. That was actually a really good way of describing that.
Very good way.
Deteran again subduing poor Hedge. So we had a little reflection on why we were reacting the way we did to that scenario.
Yes. Oh.
Also finding out that she was a master sergeant and once scared a recruit to death, literally.
That is amazing that she's that scary. And again, any backstory drops you get on any of the bridge burners that are named, I want to hear it. I need to know it all. I'm a sponge for this stuff.
Yeah. Picker and Blend's conversation about everyone getting busted down, followed by Whiskey Jack and Dujek confirming that Lasine did it on purpose to have the right people at the ground level when things went down with Shadowthrone and Cotillion. Well, others as well.
Right. And that is really, and I mean, in an italicized, really, really interesting. And it just totally changes my viewpoint on somebody I viewed as one of the villains of the piece.
Yeah, perspective matters.
Yeah, perspective matters. You know what's funny about perspective matters? A friend of mine posted a meme. It's one of the memes about the media kind of thing. It shows a lion carrying its cub, and then it says, what's real, and then what the media shows is the lion with the head bit off of that same cub because it's showing it from another angle from the other side.
Oh, right.
It's the same picture, just from a different angle, and it's like, oh, that's a very perception.
Wow. Also, we found out that there used to be an entire company made only of sappers. Pure madness.
I agree. Just pure madness, and I think it explains a little bit about Spindle, too. Maybe he's a little bit jumpy because of it.
Finding out that Tattersail was being led to be the mistress of the deck, and Perrin became master of the deck simply by being close to her spiritually at the time of her death.
That's some very, very interesting info right there. And like I said, this chapter has really tied together 3 books very tightly. More tightly bound than I realized.
Yeah, and to that point, learning the truth about what happened at the Battle of Pale, that Tayshrin attacked Nightchill in response to her betrayal.
And that's just all I got in that is just wow. I mean, wow. This exonerates Tayshrin.
Finding out that Dujek and Whiskey Jack suspect that Urko Crust and Dasim Ultor may still be alive. I guess also Cartharon Crust, they don't know that he's alive.
Yes,
we do.
We do. This is a big yes. I'm really excited to see these fellows somewhere in the story. They better show up.
Yeah, that's a big tease.
Yeah.
If he's not going to have them.
Yeah, exactly.
Come out somewhere.
Exactly. It'd be very disappointing. It would be more disappointing than the Silver Fox stuff if this did not play out, sir.
The care package being sent to Seven Cities via the Trigal Trade Guild, and Krupp getting involved in the whole thing.
Of course. Just so great, man. Tying that stuff together with both the care packages being set up right in the same, almost within the same paragraph almost. You know, it's like, here's 2 care packages sent to the Seven Cities and quite a distance apart from each other, too. It's like, not a problem. Got you. FedEx, we got you.
And finally, Perrin accidentally blessing something in relation to Anaster and the Grey Swords.
That is pretty wild, man. And I'm curious to see if there's any repercussions to him casually saying the blessing.
It may have done something.
Yeah, it could very well have done something.
Mm. All right, great job tonight, Billy.
Hey, man, great episode, man.
You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
Yeah, just what a great end to this chapter. All this info here about and this interconnectedness to the Deadhouse Gates and Guard of the Moons. These things were staggering, man. They just blew me away. I sat there with my mouth open through some of this stuff. And while these should have been core memory for me, they're not. And the only reason I can guess why this stuff is not such core memory is because at Expo Dump, it's not the same as a visual. And the things that stick with me in this book so far are these crazy visuals that that happen and these scenes that are always, even if it's not a crazy scene, it's the crazy people that are at the scene calmly discussing things. So it's just wild, man.
Agreed. Ton of info, and maybe part of it's also is so info dense that you might have read over it by accident, reading fast through, picking up pieces of it.
That's very true. And this is, as the book always expands, these things, small things are forgotten as opposed to the broad strokes.
Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
And we'll see y'all next week.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at horsefrogproductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.